This is on another important topic. This is on energy inclusive growth through affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy. See, India is obviously regarded as one of the developing economies, fastest developing economies of the world. And globally, what has been proved is whenever the per capita consumption of electricity increases, the per capita income of the population automatically goes up. But the challenge is the dependence on oil as a resource, dependence on coal as a resource for generating electricity, primarily because oil is expensive, it's a drain on the country's forex, and coal automatically becomes uh, a polluting fuel. So the intent of this chapter is to drive a correlation between income growth, population development versus per capita consumption, and how the energy mix has been there, and what are the schemes the government is taking to promote cleaner energy and inclusive energy. I would like to sincerely thank Mr. Vishwanath for getting this presentation done. Yes, so the introduction, this is what we have in store, the energy prosperity, access to energy, and energy poverty. So that's a very interesting statistic for us to understand. Energy efficiency, potential for saving in various sectors, sustainability of energy generation, electric vehicles, and the way forward. Now, over the past 2 centuries, energy has been the driving force. India has a per capita consumption which is just 1/3 of the global average. So, let's say if the global average is 600 watts per person per month, we are only doing the 200 per person per month. I'm just giving you an example. Access to clean fuel is unevenly distributed between rural and urban areas. So, we need to quadruple its per capita energy consumption to meet the rising aspirations of citizens. This will also enable India to achieve human development status of an upper middle income country. Already, you see America saying that India is no longer, or at least Mr. Trump is saying that India is no longer a developing economy, but still. So, this should give you an interesting perspective, friends. If you see, India has a purple line at the bottom, and the per capita primary energy consumption over the last uh, 50 years, we've achieved just marginal growth, or growth has been just gradually meandering upwards. But you look at countries which have actually grown really fast. You take the case of China, especially post 2000, they've just leapfrogged. You look at the case of Malaysia, they've been growing significantly and at a much higher rate. So, what is interesting to notice as far as countries are concerned, uh, if the population's per capita consumption of electricity is high, automatically the GDP and the growth of the population moves up. And if India were to aspire itself to become a middle income country from a low income country, uh, increasing access to electricity and increasing electricity consumption is of paramount relevant. It's a case which we will definitely not be able to look the other way around. Next, access to energy and energy poverty. Uh, from this table, we're able to see that almost 81% of the rural households and 59% of the urban households in the lowest 5 percentile of the classes of expenditure are reported to have firewood and chips as their primary source, which is definitely not a great sign, primarily because these lead to health hazards and they are extremely high polluting as well. This is a very important statistic, friend, which we need to be cognizant of. In this statistic, this talks about cases. I mean, the percentage of population which do not have access to clean cooking. So, as far as India is concerned, more than 50% of the population do not have access to clean cooking, whereas it's less than 10%, less than 5% in Brazil, and it's like less than 30% in China. So, we have a long way to go if at all we intend to develop this parameter of growth to make sure that the 5 trillion dream is actually achieved and doesn't remain as a dream. Yes, these are some of the initiatives which the government has been doing. So the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has been have undertaken a lot of schemes for promoting energy efficiency in various sectors across the country. So if you look at the large industry sector, the PAT scheme, the MSME, they've figured out three schemes: the lighting and appliances, building, agriculture. There are like plenty. You would see a lot of LED lights now dawning all our street lamps. So if you look at it, friends, fundamentally, the BE today, the BE, if you look at air conditioners, a 3 star or a 4 star or a 5 star will give you the efficiency of electricity, and 5 star ACs are definitely more expensive than the others, but their cost of consumption or maintenance is far lower. Similarly, for lighting and appliances, the Ujala scheme, where the government replaced or introduced huge numbers of LED bulbs in the country, replacing the traditional bulbs or the CFL bulbs. So, all these schemes discreetly have been focusing on reducing the cost of consumption of electricity or reducing the power of consumption of electricity, whereas increasing access by reduced cost of ownership. Now, this is the savings potential. And these are the scenarios for estimating energy saving potential. So using technological improvement and penetration, using policy programs and schemes, and by using a, a revised fuel mix. See, everyone admits that reducing consumption is not an alternative to bring down pollution or increasing access, but changing the fuel mix could certainly be an interesting way. And where India is at this point, we are in scenario two, where a moderate effort, as usual, technological improvements and penetration as per government agencies, successful achievement of program targets, and shift from fossil fuels to renewable fuels. We'll be seeing at a later point in time the extent to which renewables have made a penetration and the fuels they are trying to substitute. So India's energy saving potential. So what is important in this statistic is the last table, friends, the moderate to aspirational savings. So the moderate savings can be anywhere around 10% across sectors, and the aspirational savings should be around 15% across sectors, which will in turn increase the access and bring down the cost of consumption. So in agriculture, there is a potential to bring down the consumption efficiency or to increase the consumption efficiency by 15%. In transport it is 10%, domestic appliances is 15%, commercial it's 22%, and so on. Now this is very interesting, friends. Look at it. This gives the mix of energy sources as far as India is concerned. So the top one, the renewables, the purple. So that is where India's dependency on renewables, which was about 5% in 2007, has now come to roughly about 20 to 23% as we speak. But in the bargain, we have reduced our dependency on hydroelectricity. Nuclear has remained more or less constant at the 1-2%, but we still are significantly dependent on thermal power, where we use coal as the basis. So that's something which needs to come down. But you can see post 2016, there has been a marginal dip in coal consumption, but still almost 60 to 63% of the power plants in India are fired by coal. That is where the real challenge comes, because though India has one of the largest proven reserves of coal in the world, coal is a highly polluting substance when fired. So even though we move to the next slide, which talks about electric vehicles, the electricity for electric vehicles still come from coal. Of course, in many ways, it is better than using fossil fuels, but it significantly brings down our fuel consumption, oil import bills. So India has the second largest population, and the transport sector plays a crucial role. Transport is the second largest contributor to the CO2 emissions in the country. With increased vehicle ownership, the demand for fossil fuels also increased. The government has come up with the initiative of introducing electric vehicles, and several states have complemented. You would see that the graph has significantly moved from 2016 to 17. But what you should also understand on the left-hand side is we're talking about 2,000 vehicles. In a market which produces and sells millions of vehicles a year, we're talking about 2,000 vehicles being sold. So that's an unfortunate reality. But over the last 2 to 3 days, what we have seen is the GST is cut from 12 to 5%, on batteries from 18 to 5%, and the government has increased the registration charges for diesel and petrol vehicles. So there is a good push for people to discourage people from buying fossil fuel dependent vehicles and pushing them to buy electric vehicles. At least this will help the government bring down its oil dependency. But more importantly, what we also need to understand, do we have the ability to manufacture and sustainably maintain these electric vehicles? Because as we speak, yesterday the Hyundai Kona SUV, which was manufactured, which is now rolled out in India, I believe in Monte Carlo, if I'm not wrong, the car caught fire. It just burst while it was charging. So these are the real-time challenges which we need to understand with electric vehicles, especially the risks which go with it. Next. So various incentives is precisely what we've seen, the time taken for charging. So we still have infrastructure and access constraints, but yes, with the right policy scenario, this should fall in place. So what's the overall way forward as far as the National Economic Survey suggestions go? The energy efficiency is a strategy that's required for a win-win situation. Policy direction should orient itself to enhance energy efficiency programs, so bring down the or increase the efficiency of electricity generating sources and replace the current fuel mix, focusing more on renewables, bring down CO2 emissions by moving more towards electric vehicles. However, challenges being access to technology, availability of infrastructure for charging points, but with the right policy framework, it is more or less certain that uh, electric vehicles and dependency on electric uh, mobility solutions as an option is only going to increase in times to come.